Hello and welcome to the Capitol Report on NTD Television. I'm Steve Lance. The race for House Speaker heating up as former President Trump makes his opinion known, endorsing Ohio Congressman Jim Jordan. This as a plan to hold a televised candidate forum for House Speaker ditched. NTD's congressional correspondent Melina Wisecup has more on how Trump says he's willing to help and why Jordan is his choice for Speaker.
Former President Trump elaborating on his support for Congressman Jim Jordan to take the House gavel, highlighted his successes before coming to Washington, D.C. Trump writing on Truth Social, so much is learned from sports, and Jim was a master, going on to mention Jordan's championship victories in high school and college wrestling. Jordan is welcoming Trump's endorsement, but also is careful to keep in mind the different ideological perspectives of the other 220 members in the Republican House.
I appreciate the president's endorsement. He's the leader of the party. You know, we got from Freedom Caucus to people in the middle to committee chairs.
And Trump's endorsement of Jordan comes after news floated that Trump would attend that House meeting next week and also is open to temporarily serving as the Speaker to serve as a unifier. Trump says he doesn't want this position, but says he'll do it if it's necessary. But with that said, what does a Trump endorsement mean for these candidates and how members are viewing them?
I'm not really big on endorsements. It will influence a lot of people.
Say, to the extent that there was any of that opposition to Jim Jordan 9 months ago, it has absolutely softened.
I think there are a lot of people that don't support Donald Trump in the conference, quietly don't support him, and there are some who do support him.
I think a lot of us are going to wait and see how the presentation goes. I think there's going to be momentum.
Jordan and Congressman Steve Scalise are the top two Republicans vying for this speakership position. Both of them today calling off their plans to join a candidate forum live on TV with Fox News. Kevin Hern, who's a third congressman, a potential candidate, saying that he didn't decide whether or not he would try to take this position, but said that he wouldn't join that Fox debate, saying we need to make this decision as a conference, not on TV. The Republican conference needs a family discussion. The House Republican Conference is holding an internal closed-door meeting next week where they'll try to discuss and choose which candidate they want to move forward with internally before holding that public full floor vote. Reporting from Capitol Hill, Melina Wisecup, NTD News.
More jobs added than expected. What's in the September jobs report as President Biden arguing media coverage is hurting his approval ratings. NTD's Iris Tao has more from the White House.
The U.S. economy added 336,000 jobs in September, nearly doubling expectations. That's according to new data from the Labor Department, which also shows the unemployment rate remaining low at 3.8%. And President Biden touting that as a sign that Bidenomics is working.
We have the highest share of working-age Americans in the workforce in 20 years. And it's no accident. It's Bidenomics.
But the rosy job numbers could also prompt the Federal Reserve to further hike interest rates to try to tame inflation. Mortgage rates are already at a 23-year high, and prices continue to rise, with gas prices now averaging $3.75 a gallon. While President Biden says
inflation is coming down at the same time.
Republicans argue
all that means is that prices are not going up as fast as they were, and we are going to be stuck with these high prices.
Thus, as a recent poll by ABC and the Washington Post shows that President Biden's approval rating on the economy has dropped to a 30% low. But President Biden on Friday blamed media coverage for why Americans aren't feeling happy about the economy.
Why do you think most people still don't feel positive or feel good news about the economy?
You all are not the happiest people in the world. What you report. And I mean it sincerely. You get more legs when you're reporting something that's negative.
The Federal Reserve has signaled that it would closely monitor the U.S. economy to decide on future rate hikes. Its next decision could come in December. Reporting from the White House, Iris Tao, NTD News.
The president of Mexico saying the Biden administration is not actually planning to continue the construction of the southern border wall. He says it's just a show. NTD's Arian Pazdar explores.
Continuing construction of former President Trump's border wall. The White House this week announcing it will add around 20 miles of border wall in South Texas. However, Mexican President López Obrador on Friday says the Biden administration isn't actually planning on doing that, saying it's pure publicity. They don't want to build more sections of the wall. That's what they told us. Obrador's comments come just a day after high-ranking U.S. officials met with their Mexican counterparts. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas, and others traveled to Mexico to discuss immigration.
We'll discuss how we can redouble our efforts to stem the illicit flow of weapons from the United States into Mexico and synthetic drugs from Mexico into the United States.
Contrary to Obrador's comments, President Biden on Friday again said the U.S. will build the wall, adding that the administration has to continue construction because the funds have already been allocated.
Well, I was told that I had no choice, that Congress passes legislation to build something, whether it's an aircraft carrier, a wall, or provide for a tax cut. I can't say I don't like it, I'm not going to do it.
The mayors of New York City and Chicago are also traveling south to tackle the illegal immigration crisis.
We're going to assess the full situation, and that also requires our team to be at the border.
To explore this issue and more, I spoke with Victor Avila. He's a former supervisory special agent with ICE and Homeland Security. He's currently running for Congress, aiming to represent a district in southern Texas along the border. Biden administration officials and 2 Democratic mayors are traveling south. Now, does this indicate that Democrats are changing their approach to the immigration crisis?
I think that they've gotten to the point where they can't ignore it anymore. The American people are speaking out, especially because it's their own constituents, their own party, and their own members of the media that are questioning them and saying, listen, you've ignored this too far.
The administration this week also announced it will deport illegal immigrants from Venezuela back to their home country by plane. However, Avila tells me he doubts this plan will have a real-life impact, saying it would take a very long time to actually deport millions of people by plane. Ariane Pastar, NTD News.
Today was day 5 of former President Trump's business fraud trial in New York City. Joining us now to provide an overview of the case, we have David Gelman, criminal defense attorney and former deputy district attorney of Burlington County, New Jersey. David Gelman, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, David, if you could just sort of provide our viewers with a little bit of context and briefly explain the nature of this fraud trial that the former president is currently facing in Manhattan.
Sure. So what's going on right now is Trump, the president, and some of his family members, his sons particularly, are being sued under the Consumer Fraud Act. And the allegation is that the family overestimated or overvalued the assets that they had. So all of their properties, Mar-a-Lago, the Trump buildings, everything like that, they're saying that they were overvalued by quite a few dollars to deceive lenders. Now, it's an interesting case. Number one, it's a civil case, so it's not criminal. So in the event that there is a guilty plea or guilt associated with this, he is not going to be going to jail for anything like this. This is purely a monetary case. Now, what is going on right now is there's 2 separate parts of this trial, if you will. The first part has already been decided. The first part was where the judge actually ruled in favor of the plaintiff, or the state of New York in this matter, and entered a summary judgment against the president. Now where they are at is the part of the trial for damages. This is going to show how much is Trump liable to the state of New York. And the state of New York, they're asking for $250 million in damages, along with other penalties, like that Trump cannot do business in New York anymore, and that there has to be a separate individual or separate entity that is running the companies now.
Now, you touched upon this earlier, David. New York Attorney General Letitia James, she's alleging that Trump inflated his net worth by billions. The former president is pretty adamant, saying that that's not the case. He's bringing up a particular instance with the valuation of his Mar-a-Lago estate down in Palm Beach. How do you kind of decide who's right and who's wrong in these valuations? And if indeed the Attorney General, is incorrect, what does that do to this case?
Well, it's a great question, and it's very interesting. Now, they're stating, or Letitia James is stating, that Mar-a-Lago is only worth $18 million. Right? You and I both know that that's impossible. Just look at the location alone. So we all know that this is just really a political stunt, if anything. What they are going to be doing, though, is they're going to appeal this. Trump already lost the facts of the case, if you will. So that will be appealed. And actually, just before we went on the air, it was announced that the Trump legal team has filed for an emergent appeal of the judge's ruling for, number one, not allowing for there to be a postponement of the trial, and number two, due to his rulings so far. So that'll be interesting to see where that goes. But the other thing that is very interesting in this, and that your viewers should know, is there's not an actual victim in the matter. So lenders, mortgage houses, the public, nobody has actually been defrauded. So the only individual, or the only people, I guess, that is being alleged to be defrauded is the actual government or the state of New York. But again, they have not been defrauded. All these loans and anything like that have already been paid back. So this is really a bunch of nothing, if you will, and it just shows that it's more of a political ploy, if anything. He didn't defraud anybody, and his valuations were based on other expert opinions or expert valuations. So he can't just say, oh, well, Mar-a-Lago is worth, $1 billion. There has to be an actual expert evaluator giving these valuations, which they did that. Banks aren't going to just loan money to individuals by their word. If that was the case, we could all say our houses are worth hundreds of millions of dollars to get loans. So it's not a cut and dry situation, and it's certainly not a victim-oriented matter here, for the simple reason that everything has been paid back, and he hasn't, and what hasn't been paid back has not been defaulted on. So the president, or the company, if you will, have paid everything they've been supposed to be paying, and they keep continuing to pay the bills. So again, this is really a waste of time and a waste of taxpayer money, if anything.
Attorney David Gelman, as always, appreciate your perspective. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for watching the Capitol Report. If you want to see our full broadcast, check us out at epochtv.com.